Good evening, everyone. I'm Ankit and you're watching the Indian Express analysis on StudyIQ IS English. Today is 14th of April and you understand today is also the birth anniversary of one of the modern architects of modern India, that is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So naturally, our first article is going to be about him as we'll discuss important organizations, important journals that were introduced by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and also the role that he played in drafting the supreme law of the land, that is the Indian Constitution. Now, many information regarding Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, these are important from modern history perspective. Therefore, the relevant chapter is GS paper 1. In the second article, we'll be covering about India's latest laser directed energy weapon as it was tested by DRDO yesterday. Now you understand such kind of a weapons is a very advanced form of weapons which allows or which will allow Indian Armed Forces to tackle any air-based threats regardless of the use of missiles, because you understand whenever there is an incoming aircraft or missile which can pose a threat to India, it will be effectively neutralized by surface to air missiles. But when it comes to attacks of hundreds and thousands of drones, you understand firing $1 million missiles on each and every smaller or bigger drone is not very cost effective. So what you need in that case is a laser directed energy weapon which will provide you with a cost effective, fast and an easy solution to deal with such kind of a threats. So we'll be understanding this development in detail and it is relevant from GS paper 3 perspective as it is a science and tech matter. Similarly, in the third article, we'll be understanding about extradition of Tahawwur Rana as his extradition recently happened in India and the custody has been given to the India's primary anti-terrorism investigation agency, that is National Investigation Agency. So we'll be understanding in detail about such agencies and how the extradition process has happened between India and US and the provisions that are under the India-US extradition treaty. Will also try to understand this in our today's discussion. Now, this kind of an article is relevant from GS paper 2 perspective because it deals with a statutory body NIA and it also deals with the process of extradition, which is a matter of international relation. In the fourth article, we'll be understanding about the oil controlling bodies, that is OPEC and OPEC plus, because recently you've understood the prices of crude oil, they've fallen down a lot, and as the prices of crude oil have fallen down a lot, you can understand this can lead to many effects, particularly in the nations which are major producers of crude oil. So in this regard, we'll be understanding the membership details of OPEC and OPEC plus, which is important from a prelims perspective and it also is important from GS paper 2 perspective. In the fifth article, we'll be covering an article given in the explained section. This article talks about Genome India project. Now, Genome India project is essentially mapping of genome of Indian population, that is diverse set of people living in India. Now, you understand the first phase of Genome India project was concluded recently, which allowed the government to collect the genome data of 10,000 Indian citizens. Now, you understand this project will begin its second phase, which will allow it to collect another set of genome from a different set of population. We'll try to understand what the first and second phase entails in our today's discussion. This again is a part of GS paper 3 syllabus because it deals with matters relating to science and technology. And in the last article of the day, if the time permits, we'll be understanding Iran-US nuclear deal, because you understand before Trump came into power last time as president, he withdrew America from the GCPOA. GCPOA was a deal signed between America, P5 nations of UNSC, including Germany as well as European Union and Iran, which allowed Iran to withdraw its nuclear power in exchange for certain relaxation of economic sanctions. Now you understand, since US has withdrawn from the deal, it has again imposed many kind of an economic and military sanctions on Iran, which has crippled its economy. So that is why under popular pressure, under public pressure, Iran wants to renegotiate the terms of this deal with US, and it has also met with favorable circumstances by the US president, again President Donald Trump. So we'll try to understand and its implication on India. So therefore the relevant topic is GS paper 2 and also sometimes you can say this is relevant from GS paper 3 perspective. So let us get started with our today's discussion. The notes of the session, as usual, I'll make them available on my Telegram channel, ATS Live. So you have an option to go to this Telegram channel. And if you are still unable to find it, by entering ATS Live on the top right hand corner, you also have another option to scan this QR code. It will take you directly to my channel. Good evening, Augustine, Niranjan, Sarang, Aanchal. Good to see you all after so long. Now let us start our today's discussion with this first article, and you can understand today is the birth anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So many ministries have published their advertisements in our newspaper, so I have borrowed these advertisements to highlight the importance of the day. The day is essentially helps us remember one of the founding fathers of modern India, that is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who is also the chairperson of the drafting committee in the Constituent Assembly, right? So that is why he has played an important role in Indian polity. Now currently, irrespective of the party, irrespective of the region, you'll see every politician, every political party agree with the principles given by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So there might be something very transformative about his principle, right? That in a divided society like India, in a divided political system like India, if people agree with one thing, that is the principles of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So in this regard, let us try to understand some of the important provisions, principles, and also some of the key facts relating to the life of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Now, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, popularly known as Baba Sahib, is a monumental figure in Indian history. I don't have to tell you that again and again. From being the chief architect of India's constitution to fighting equality and social justice for people of downtrodden caste, his immense contribution to Indian society has been honored every year on his birth anniversary, that is today on 14th of April. So this presents us the context of our today's discussion. Now what you have to remember is important facts and relevant information regarding to his life, which is important from a prelims perspective. Now he was born in 1891 in Mau town of Madhya Pradesh, and he belonged to a downtrodden caste known as Mahar caste. Now as he belonged to such a downtrodden caste, therefore his earlier life, it was marked by severe forms of caste-based discrimination. So anytime when a person is subjected to such kind of a social exclusion, such kind of a caste-based discrimination, naturally it brings in him a resolve to fight these kind of discrimination once he grows as an adult person. And similarly, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar also had this kind of a resolve. This kind of a resolve promoted him to get educated quite well. In those times, you have to remember, in 1890s, a person belonging to such a caste who is considered or ostracized by his own fellow people living in this society, you understand what might have been the conditions that allowed him to perceive education and how difficult it might have been to get educated like a normal person in that time. Now, his imprint on Indian polity is quite significant. For example, even before India got independent, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar played a key role when it came to arousing the consciousness of people about the problems faced by the people belonging to downtrodden caste. Now, he brought many kind of organizations, many kind of a journal to further his cause, to express his opinion to larger context. Now in 1924, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar founded an organization known as Bahishkrit Hitkarni Sabha. If you translate this word roughly, it means Society for the Welfare of the Excluded. Now this organization, it was aimed at promoting education among the people who are known as Dalits and improving their socio-economic status. Also, he started many publications like the Mook Nayak, which roughly translates to the leader of the silent, Bahishkrit Bharat, which is excluded India, and Equality Janta, to raise his concerns for the concerns of the downtrodden caste, who he named as Dalits. And you understand, even today the lexicon Dalit is quite popular in highlighting these many castes who have historically experienced ostracization, who have historically experienced discrimination in the Indian society. Now you understand this kind of a prevalence of these kind of extreme measures of discrimination has been prevalent in Indian society. So you need certain kind of measures to eradicate these kind of practices from happening, and also to tell people that this is not the right way to treat people. People in general are equal. You do not have to discriminate them just because they were born in a poor family, just because they were born in a particular caste. And how this consciousness has arrived in Indian society, you can understand, or you can, one of the people you can give credit to that is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, right? Also, what you have to understand, is his political organizations that allowed him to advocate for the rights of people belonging to Dalit caste. Now, one of the major public action that he was known for is participating in the Mahat Satyagraha. Now, you understand, people belonging to the Dalit community historically and sometimes even today in different parts of our country, they are subjected to deep discrimination, deep ostracization. For example, the public utilities like accessing water in a near water body or entering even the religious places that were prohibited earlier. So to fight with such kind of injustice, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar first of all started with Mahat Satyagraha, which was aimed at asserting the rights of Dalit people to access water resources. Like what he did in Mahat Satyagraha, he took water out of a public tank, which historically was prohibited for people of Dalit caste to use. He took water out of that tank and drank that water. So when he drank that water, it actually highlighted that now even people from Dalit section will be allowed to have water from such kind of a public utilities. Similarly, he also participated in the Kalaram temple movement in 1930, because you understand, people from Dalit community, they were even not allowed to enter religious places like temples. So this, by entering the temple, which was not meant for Dalit people to be entered, he highlighted civil disobedience much similar to the way which Gandhiji did against the Britishers. So this highlighted his consciousness, this highlighted his bold attitude towards dealing with such problems or issues in Indian society, right? Also, what you have to understand is many of its organization, because recognizing the importance of legal avenue in social reform, he was a lawyer by education. So he understood that in order to deal with such kind of a social issues, you need a strong law that has to be passed by a authority. Now at that time, when Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was in play in 1920s, who was the authority manning India? That was the British India. So naturally, he cooperated with the Britishers in order to bring such kind of a legislation which prohibit discrimination. So in order to do that, he attended the round table conferences which happened in London as the representative of the Dalit community, and he advocated for separate electorates for Dalits to ensure that their political representation happen even in the divided society like India. Now this was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar demand for political upliftment of the Dalit community, but you have to understand the origin of separate electorate. Separate electorate was introduced by Britishers in 1909 as a measure to introduce representation by different community. That's what they said on paper. However, the real intention of Britishers to introduce such kind of a reform, that is separate electorate, was actually to divide and rule Indian society. This started with introducing of separate electorate in 1909 for people belonging to Muslim community, and it was extended to other communities in 1919. Similarly, in 1932, the Britishers announced what was known as a communal award, which extended the provision of separate electorate now to different sections of Hindu society, that is even people belonging to Dalit religion, Dalit section. Now, what you have to understand, that people like Mahatma Gandhi, who advocated for a uniform political opposition against the British, he was against this kind of a move. He felt that the problem of untouchability was very real in India, but you can't pit one section of the Indian society or Hindu society against another section. So Mahatma Gandhi, he went against this popular communal award which was announced by Britishers to provide separate electorate to the Dalit community, and against that Mahatma Gandhi started fast until death. Now his demand was not to divide the electorate based on different sections of Hindu, and after the negotiations with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Mahatma Gandhi agreed to sign what? Pune Pact. Now what Pune Pact allowed was having reserved seat in the legislature of both provincial as well as central legislation for people belonging to Dalit community, while the electorate remained general. So this means that people belonging to all the sections of Indian society will vote for a particular candidate, but in certain seats, the seats will be reserved for candidates only belonging to Dalit community. Now this has even, or this practice has even continued today, where you will find seats in both state legislature as well as Indian parliament. Some of the seats, that is 33% of the seats, sorry, not 33%, 25, I guess it's 15 plus 7.5% for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, right? So these amount of seats, these are reserved for people belonging to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. So this is the practice that originated during Pune Pact of 1932, which was signed between Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So in a way, we ensured that political representation of Dalit happening without dividing the Indian society. Now you also have to understand the politics of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. B.R. Ambedkar essentially was a lawyer by profession, but he was also very active in political sphere. As a first significant foray in Indian politics, he started an organization known as Independent Labour Party in 1936 to naturally represent the interest of people belonging to working class as well as Dalits. Now, recognizing the need for focused political effort to issue the addresses faced by Dalit section, he transformed his Independent Labour Party into what was known as All India Scheduled Caste Federation in 1942. Now, the purpose of transforming this party was to aimed explicitly at mobilizing Dalit for political action, although it struggled to achieve significant electoral success on a national level. Because at that time, significant Indian political interests were represented majorly by one political party, that was Indian National Congress. However, according to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he felt that the interests of Dalit people were not actually represented like it should have been by the Indian National Congress, so he floated a new party differently. However, its political success was somewhat limited. Now, one of the most highlighted aspects about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is that he was announced as the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constituent Assembly, which allowed for drafting of the constitution, and he was responsible naturally from framing the Indian constitution. So many provisions of the Indian constitution, you'll see the imprint of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. For example, the principles enshrined in the constitution and even in the preamble, that is ideals of justice, liberty, equality and fraternity, all this can be attributed directly and indirectly to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Similarly, provisions like reservations for certain backward classes, abolition of untouchability, all of this is a part of what? Part 3rd of the Indian constitution, that is the fundamental rights. So Article 15 and 16, it provides for reservations in jobs, in educational institution for people belonging to backward classes, and Article 17, it actually prohibits the practice of untouchability. All of this can be attributed to one person itself, that is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Similarly, after independence, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was also India's first Minister of Law and Justice in the cabinet of first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. In his capacity, Dr. Ambedkar made one of the most notable contribution, that was introduction of Hindu Code Bill. Now, I've highlighted you many times that before India's got independence, the personal laws in our country were divided naturally in form of religion. So, people belonging to Hindu religion were regulated differently in matters of their personal laws like marriage, succession, adoption, etc. Similarly, people belonging to different religion had their own separate laws. But the problem was, these kind of laws were not codified, and also these kind of laws, they did not follow any uniform principles of how to ensure civil laws in India, right? So, the first way to introduce a uniformity in India's civil laws and personal laws was introduction of Hindu Code Bill. But you can understand in 1950, this met with certain resistance, and therefore, during the time when Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was India's law minister, this bill was not passed in the Indian Parliament. Now, in 1956, Baba Sahib Ambedkar announced the establishment of Republican Party of India by dismissing his earlier organizations, that was All India Scheduled Caste Federation. And Republican Party of India even exists till today in Maharashtra, right? So, this was the contribution of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the politics, in the society, in the Constitution of India, right? Now, let's see if you are able to solve this question. This is the first question that we'll solve. This is actually the PYQ which appeared in 2020. Vittal Vidwansak, the first monthly journal to have untouchable people as its target audience, was published by who? Please let me know the correct answer as soon as possible in the comment section. Good evening, Happy. What is the correct answer? Sarang says option D. Anyone else? Aanchal F. Aanchal says option D. Well, Bhanu, Amar, Aanchal, Sarang, all of you are incorrect. It was Gopal Baba Wanglekar. Now, if you remember this particular journal, it started to be published in what? 1889. And when was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar born? 1891. So therefore option A is the right answer. I told you the famous publications of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in our today's discussion. It was not Vittal Vidvanshak. So that is why my purpose of asking this question was this. Now let's see if you are able to solve this question, PYQ of 2023. I'll get out of your way. Please let me know the correct answer as soon as possible. No problem, Achal. I understood that you have typed it by mistake. Sarang says option C, Amar says option B, Bhanu says option C. Well, first, you must have known this by now that the government celebrates Constitution Day on 26th of November, and the reason why we celebrate Constitution Day on 26th of November, because final draft of the Indian Constitution was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on this date. That is in 26 November 1949, whereas in what date our constitution was started to enacted in the Indian Parliament, that is what is the day since our constitution became applicable on India, that is 26th of January in 1950, and we celebrate Republic Day to celebrate this very event, right? Now in 26th of November 1949, the final draft of the Constituent Assembly was of the Constitution was enacted in the Constituent Assembly, whereas the committee was set up in 29th August 1947, right? So therefore second statement becomes incorrect, first was right, so option C is the right answer. And Reshma, Achal, Bhanu, you're correct. Shweta, please read the question again. This says the Constituent Assembly of India set up drafting committee under the chairperson on this date. This becomes incorrect because this was set up on 29th August 1947, whereas on 26 November 1949 the final draft of the constitution was adopted in the Indian Constituent Assembly, and naturally this constitution came into force on few days from that, that is on 26th January 1950, which we know as Republic Day. Okay. Now let us move to the next article. This was a big development yesterday, and if you saw the commentary around it, that it was a transformative event. Now imagine if you were a military commander back in Jammu, and suppose one of your juniors alerts you that a incoming Pakistani F-16 is coming your way to destroy any Indian target. So what will be your natural plan of action? Your natural plan of action will be to order launch of a surface to air missile to counter that particular Pakistani fighter jet, right? So this is a very common assumption. But what if I'll tell you hundreds and thousands of drones from Pakistan are going to attack an Indian territory? So what will you do? Do you think an Indian field commander will have thousands of missiles at its disposal in a particular time? And what if even that is true, if that commander has thousands of missiles at his disposal, do you think it will make a very good cost rationale for you to launch thousands of missiles to counter drones which are being procured at what? Thousands of rupees. And what is the cost of a missile? Cost of a missile goes into millions of dollars. So it is not a very good rationale to counter such huge amount of drones with your missiles, which are quite expensive. So naturally, the Indian agencies have come up with a solution, that is a laser powered directed energy weapon, which will help us counter such kind of a threats that have emerged these days, right? So this is the context of our today's discussion. India yesterday successfully conducted its first trial of a high-powered laser weapon Mark IIA using directed energy to neutralize an aerial target. Now this laser-based system was developed by Defense Research and Development Organization. It was used to shoot down a drone, marking a major milestone in the futuristic defense capability. So this is the context of our today's discussion. Now what you have to understand, related facts relating to this kind of a weapon system. Now the trial of this weapon system was conducted in a city in Andhra Pradesh at National Open Air Range, and this platform was created by a lab of DRDO known as CHESS, Center for High Energy Systems and Science, which collaborated with other laboratories of DRDO like LRDE, IRDE, DLRI. So the main agency behind this development is CHESS, which is a lab of DRDO, right? Now what you have to understand that this weapon, it detects the threat with the help of a radar system, also known as electro-optic sensors. So whenever it detects a threat, which might be an aircraft, which might be a drone, which might be a missile, then it helps to lock and strike that target with the speed of light through laser light. Now it is a very high intensity laser that can cause structural failure in the drones, and at some circumstances when it hits an explosive component in that particular aerial target, it can also destroy that particular aerial target. Now during the field test, this particular weapon system engaged long range fixed wing drones. It disrupted the coordinated drone attacks and also disrupted and disabled enemy surveillance devices such as sensors and antenna that might be mounted on that particular drone system. So it is quite an effective solution when it comes to dealing with targets or aerial targets. Understand? Now, why are we using such kind of a weapon system when we have missiles? Now, as I told you, missiles are quite expensive, and also there is a chance that you might not have huge amount of missiles at your disposal to counter each and every drone that might be flying in your direction. So therefore, it offers a significant advantage over the traditional defense systems like missiles and other aircraft mounted missiles, right? Now, first, the most highlighted aspect of this is that it actually reduces the dependence on costly ammunition. As I told you, missiles, they actually cost millions of dollars, whereas when it comes to drones, these can be procured at few thousands of rupees, right? So understand the difference between the costs. So when you are using with help of few thousands and lakhs of rupees, you can actually attack a particular place with hundreds of drones. But when it comes to countering those drones, each and every missile will cost you millions of dollars. So this is not a very cost effective resolution. Now in the article, the chairperson of CHESS, which is a laboratory which has developed this kind of a weapon system, it has said that for firing few seconds of laser, the maximum amount of cost that will be incurred will be few liters of petrol. So in hundreds of rupees, you can actually destroy a particular drone target. So that is why it is a very cost effective solution. Also, whenever you are firing a missiles, naturally some of the parts of that destroyed missile and the aircraft might fall on the ground, which can cause certain what is known as collateral damage, right? So as to prevent these collateral damage, we are now using a laser based system which reduces the amount of debris that might fall on the ground. Similarly, the speed with which you can counter these threats is quite high, because laser, it travels at the speed of light, although missiles are quite fast, but they can't match the speed of light, right? So therefore, these weapon systems, they deliver precise target or precise attack of the targets with high speed as well as lethality in seconds, which makes it one of the most cost effective and also quite efficient drone system that have been, or counter drone systems that have been developed so far. Also, these are particularly suited to counter low cost drone swarms, which has become an increasingly common threat in our today's war based scenarios, because you can understand, in Russia-Ukraine war, drones were utilized in large number by both parties. Similarly, to conduct attacks on Iran and its allies like Houthis, they've conducted attacks through huge number of drones. So you need these kind of capabilities to combat such kind of huge employment of drone to conduct attacks on your important installations. Also, during the war period, what is one of the major drawbacks that the armies face is to ensure logistics. Now, suppose if I have deployed a missile in the border areas, but those missiles won't be manufactured in border areas, right? Those will be manufactured in factories located in different parts of the country. So you have to ensure that these missiles are delivered from their factories to the areas where they will be deployed. So this can become quite difficult during the time of war, and also use certain resources from the army's disposal. So this actually eases the process of logistics, that you significantly only have to depend on power to use these kind of laser weapon system, as against a huge logistical system which will help you supply these missiles to the forward areas. So these are all the advantages of such laser directed energy system. First of all, it reduces the cost of countering such threats. Another factor is the speed with which you can counter these threats. This is quite quick. Also, it will reduce and it will allow the armies to be better suited for modern based warfare, which hugely employs drones these days, and also it eases the process of logistics on the or logistical burden on the defense forces, right? So these are the advantages. Now, what is the significance for India? Now, as I told you, militaries worldwide are looking for an efficient and cost effective countermeasures, particularly to deal with next generation defense strategies like how to counter drones, how to counter thousands and hundreds of drones. Now, this weapon system was designed and developed indigenously, and this directed energy weapon system, it represents a big breakthrough for Indian armed forces. Only a handful of countries like US, like China, like Russia, like Israel have these kind of weapon systems. Now India is one of those countries, so that is why it joins a selected group of countries that possess such kind of a capability, which we have seen is getting quite drastic as the days goes by, because many state based actors like armies, defense forces and non-state based actors, they also use these kind of drones to conduct attacks on their enemy countries, and therefore India needs to be prepared to deal with such kind of a threats. Now, is India getting ready with more weapon systems? The answer is yes. Now, these kind of weapon systems, majorly they are called as Star Wars weapon system, because I don't know if you have seen the Star Wars movie. There people used to employ a huge amount of lasers to counter any kind of enemies. So the Indian government and Indian defense organizations, they are also focusing on new age weapon systems like high energy microwaves. Now, you know what high energy microwaves can do? They can actually vaporize any kind of water or liquid based source in enemy's solution, right? So suppose if an army is going to attack you, you fire these kind of high energy microwave system and you vaporize all their water supplies. You can also vaporize all the hydraulics that is there in their weapon systems, effectively making them bad. Similarly, there are electromagnetic pulses that you can send directed electromagnetic pulses to any kind of a computerized system, any kind of a electronic equipment, which will render these electronic equipment as not good, right? So this is how you are developing new kinds of weapon system which will help you counter new generation threats. Understand? Now let's see if you are able to solve this question. With reference to laser directed energy weapons, consider the following statements. Laser DEWs can engage targets at speed of light and are capable of disabling or destroying drones, missiles and aircrafts. Similarly, laser DEWs require continuous replenishment of ammunition to function effectively during combat operations. Which is the correct answer? Please do let me know. Well, this I told you, right? Laser fires laser light, it travels at the speed of light, so it is quite fast when it comes to missiles. Now I know missiles are also very fast, but it can't match the speed of lasers, and also these are capable of destroying any flying objects. I told you with the example of drones, it can also tackle aircrafts and missiles with huge efficacy and effectiveness. But laser DWs, they do not require continuous replenishment, because the only source that you are using is power, right? So you don't need ammunition, you don't need any kind of explosives to power these kind of weapon systems. So it makes logistics for the defense forces whenever they are engaged in war quite easy, right? So that is why second statement is incorrect. First one is right. So option A is your right answer. Reshma, Shushmita, Anchal, Amar, you're correct. Sarang and Niranjan, please reread the question. I think you'll get it right the second time. Okay. Now let us move to this third article. This article appeared on page 9 of the Indian Express, and it talks about extradition of Tahawwur Rana, right? Now what you have to understand, that a terrorist who was very much instrumental in conducting attacks on Indian soil on 26th of November 2008, after a successful extradition of this particular terrorist has happened from US, and the custody has been provided to National Investigation Agency. So what becomes important from our prelims perspective is how the process of extradition happens and few facts relating to the body known as National Investigation Agency. So first let us understand few facts relating to National Investigation Agency. Now India's Central Counter-Terrorism Law Enforcement Agency, which was constituted as per an act, National Investigation Agency Act of 2008, after the 26/11 Mumbai terrorist attack. Now, earlier, before NIA was in place, the investigation of such terror attacks was done by the state police. Now, I understand terror networks can not just spread in different cities of a particular state, but it can spread across nations and it can also be spread across different countries. So in order to provide or have a very good investigation so as to allow us to prosecute such people who are responsible for these dastardly attacks, we needed a Indian or a pan-Indian agency which was constituted in form of NIA. Now, this agency is empowered to deal with instigation or investigation of a terror-related crime wherever it happens in India or even outside these days, and this can be done after the written permission of the Ministry of Home Affairs, which is the nodal agency of this NIA. Similarly, other investigating agencies like CBI, they need permission of a particular state government in order to investigate any cases in their jurisdiction. But with NIA, they do not need the permission from the state governments if they have to conduct investigation in a particular state relating to terrorist activities, right? So, in terms of power, NIA is much more powerful as compared to other investigating agencies like CBI, right? Now, let us understand the process of extradition. Now, extradition, it actually involves handing over the custody of a particular person who has been accused of a particular crime, right? Now, extradition between India and US, it is regulated through a treaty which was signed by both countries known as India-US Extradition Treaty of 1997. It was signed to facilitate extradition between India and US. Now, an offence under this treaty and a person arrested in one of these countries will be extradited to another country in case they are committing any crimes that are suggested or that are written as a crime in both countries. That is, first of all, you have to fulfill the dual criminality principle. Suppose if terrorism is not legalized or is not defined as a crime in US, then that person would not have been extradited, right? So that person should have committed crime as per the provisions in both countries, then only you can extradite that particular person. Now, generally, under extradition treaty, offences that are political in nature, that are not covered. However, if some crimes that are not considered as political offences, such as murder of head of a state, hijacking of an aircraft, terrorism, crimes against internationally protected persons, these are not categorized as a crime under India-US Extradition Treaty. No, sorry, these are considered as a crime, these are not considered as a political offense, right? So, if a person has committed these kind of crimes, they will be eligible to be extradited under India-US Extradition Treaty. Similarly, extradition may be refused under certain circumstances. Suppose the person feels that he is risked to be prosecuted solely based on his race, religion, nationality or political belief, then that person might not be extradited. Similarly, offences that are military in nature, these are generally excluded from extradition treaty, and offences that carry capital punishment, unless the requesting country gives assurance that death penalty will not be carried out, then the extradition won't happen, right? So these are the cases which actually allows either of the countries to refuse extradition. Okay. Now, you understand there are certain challenges when it comes to extradition of persons between India and US. First, this process is indeed very slow. When was 26/11 incident happened? That happened in 2008, and the person was arrested in quite a nearby time of 2008. But you understand the extradition has happened in which year? In 2025. That is more than 17 years after the terrorist attack happened. So understand this is a slow process, as cases often take years due to legal challenges. 65 Indian fugitives, these are awaiting extradition from the US, and only 11 extraditions between 2002 and 2018 has happened. So you can understand this is indeed a very slow process. Similarly, Tahawwur Rana was only extradited after he exhausted all his legal appeals in the US justice system. Also, US in general has been reluctant in handing over several key suspects that are accused of crime even in India. For example, David Headley, another collaborator of Tahawwur Rana, who wrecked many spots that eventually was attacked by the terrorists, he has not been extradited to India. Similarly, Warren Anderson, who was the chairperson of Union Carbide, he was the CEO of Union Carbide, the company, the plant from which it resulted into Bhopal gas tragedy. Now, these persons have not been extradited by US. Also, India and US, you understand, they have a very different legal system. So, some Indian charges don't meet US legal standards for extradition. So there might be cases that if Indian government has sought extradition from US for certain people, US will actually deny, saying that these or those kind of allegations don't constitute a crime under US laws. Understand? Any doubt you have? Now, there is another thing that you need to know, the difference between extradition treaty and extradition arrangements. Now, extradition treaty, you have to understand, this is a formal legal agreement between two countries, and India has signed extradition treaties with as many as 48 countries. These include major countries like US, UK, Canada, France, Germany, UAE, Russia and Australia. Also, the informal understanding between the two governments or two countries whenever it comes to extradition, this is known as a extradition agreement. This is a mutual understanding. It is not having a legal force. Right now, presently, India has extradition agreements with 12 countries, which include Hong Kong, Saudi, Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Italy, Switzerland, and Sweden. Now you understand, India also has an extradition treaty with Bangladesh. Under that treaty, the current Bangladesh government asked India to extradite Sheikh Hasina back to Bangladesh, right? So this is the difference between extradition treaty and extradition agreement. Extradition treaty is a legal agreement. It is legally binding on the countries to extradite a person. However, extradition arrangement is just a mutual understanding. It is not having a legal force. Now let's see. Now suppose we are dealing with a particular energy system or a particular weapon system that has been used. But what about other weapon systems that have not appeared in news, right? So we take those classes in detail about each and every weapon system that is relevant from your UPSC's perspective in our internal security class and also in our science and technology class. Similarly, other teachers also teach different subjects. For example, I teach economy, other faculties teach other subjects in our P2I batches that are also known as foundation batches. There, the teaching is provided for everything that is information relevant from your prelims, from your mains and from your interview perspective. And currently the admissions are open for April evening batch. But what you have to remember that the admissions for April evening batch will close on 15th of April. And you understand, if you have to appear in next year's prelims, now is the right time for you to get admissions and you need not delay it further. So that is why on the last announcement that the admissions for these April evening batch will close tomorrow. So please take admissions as soon as possible. These are different kind of courses that are available. If you ask my opinion, I'll say that the diamond courses are the best because it provides you all the features that are there in StudyIQ courses. It is available at a very nominal rate right now. If you have to take admissions for such courses in English language, what you have to do is click on explore courses. You'll be given an option for different kind of batches which are going on currently, right? Let me refresh it. Now, if you have to get educated specifically in English, and if I understand many of the students who are watching these videos, they might not be very comfortable with Hindi because Hindi might not be their mother tongue. So in case you have to enroll in English, click on this UPSC IAS English. The first tile is for Foundation 2026 April evening batch. Click on this particular tile. Now you understand the course right now is available at 39,999. That is the diamond batch. But what if I tell you, you can get discounts even on this amount by using the code that is flashing on the bottom half of your screen, that is ATS Live, right? Click on buy now. Here you have an option to add promo code. Click on add promo code. Click on enter coupon code, write ATS Live. As soon as you click apply, you'll see that the discount of 7,000 rupees is applicable. Now the diamond batch is available only at 32,999. Similarly, platinum is offered at 27,500 and gold is offered at 16,999. So the maximum discount is applicable on by using the code ATS Live, that is 7,000 discounts, and you'll get the diamond batch at 32,999. Understand? So this is how you enroll for your courses, and do not forget to add these promo codes to get maximum discounts and save your and your parents' hard-earned money. Understand? Now let us move back to our discussion. This is the next article which appeared in the newspaper on page 10. This is the page actually which deals with business and economy related news. Now if you look at the context of this news, it says that the oil prices or the prices of crude oil in the international market, they have hit lowest in last 4 years, with the benchmark Brent crude rate has even slipped below the levels of $60 per barrel earlier this week. Another important benchmark known as West Texas Intermediate, abbreviated as WTI, which usually trades at a rate significantly lower than Brent, it has slid even lower. While there has been minor recovery in the prices, since the general sentiment around the prices of crude oil is bearish. I have told you in our last discussion the difference between bearish sentiments and bullish sentiments. Bearish sentiments means anything that the prices of any commodity, if it is expected to go down, that is known as bearish sentiment. Similarly, had it been bullish, it meant that people expect the prices of crude oil to go up. Understand? Also, what is important from our today's discussion is the different kind of benchmarks which is used to understand the prices of crude oil. First is Brent, another one is West Texas Intermediate, right? Now, this article also talks about important global bodies like OPEC and OPEC plus. So, let us discuss few facts relating to these global bodies, okay? Now, first fact relating to OPEC is that it was founded in 1960 in Baghdad by countries like Iraq, Iran, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia as well as Venezuela. And the purpose of forming this organization or OPEC was with an aim to coordinate petroleum policies and securing fair and stable prices. Currently, OPEC includes 13 countries which are mainly from the regions of Middle East and Africa, and they produce almost 1/3 of crude oil supply to the world, that is 30% of world's crude oil supply. Also, these bodies formed a larger coalition with non-OPEC countries, and this is known as OPEC plus coalition, which includes 13 members of OPEC countries and 10 additional members who are other major producers of crude oil. And these are also crude oil exporting nations, which include Russia at the end of 2016. So, the two related bodies are OPEC and OPEC plus. So, this is the membership of OPEC and OPEC plus. OPEC consists of 13 countries, and if you add 10 other countries, it makes it OPEC plus, right? So, the members of this body include 13 members of OPEC are these bodies, which includes Venezuela, Saudi, UAE. So, majorly countries are from Middle East and Africa. 3 countries are from elsewhere, Equatorial Guinea also in Africa, Gabon and Venezuela are in the Latin America. Similarly, non-OPEC countries, it includes other 10 members that are Russia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Bahrain, Brunei, Malaysia, Mexico, Oman, South Sudan and Sudan. So, these are the membership. Please remember this. Please make a separate notes and remember these facts. These are very important. Now, what is the significance of OPEC and OPEC plus? OPEC plus represents around 40% of world's oil production, and the main aim of this body is to regulate the supply of oil in the world market. So, whenever the prices of crude oil reduces a lot, they reduce their production so as to create a deficit in supply, right? Similarly, whenever the prices of crude oil goes up, they increase their supply so as to gain maximum profit in the market, right? Now, the leaders of the crude oil production among OPEC and OPEC plus are Saudi and Russia, which produces around 9 and 9.5 million barrels per day of oil respectively, right? So, this is what you have to remember. Now, let's see if you are able to solve this particular question. This appeared in in the prelims of 2020. Good afternoon, Mahitosh. Yes, I've told you, right? West Texas Intermediate is a benchmark known for crude oil, right? Now, let's see if you are able to solve this practice question. Yes, Sai, yes, Anchal, all of you are correct. Shushmita, Sarang, correct. Now, the grouping OPEC plus consists of 13 countries which are mainly from Middle East and Africa. We are talking about OPEC plus, and it represents more than 60% of world's oil production. Well, Shushmita, you are correct. Neither of them is the right answer because OPEC plus consists of 13 plus 10 countries, right? And these are from different areas. OPEC, I told you, majorly are from Middle East and Africa. OPEC Plus also includes countries like Kazakhstan, Russia, countries like Malaysia, which are major producers of crude oil, right? And it represents how much production of global crude oil? That is 40% of global crude oil production, not 60, right? So therefore, both of these statements are incorrect, and therefore option D is your right answer. Achal, Reshma, please reread the question. I'm sure after revising this article, you will be able to get this statement right. Okay. Now let us move to another article. This article appeared in the Indian Express Explain section on page 12, and it talks about Genome India project, why mapping genetic diversity matters, right? Now this article actually talks about the Department of Biotechnology's initiative of mapping the human genomes of as many as 10,000 Indian citizens, and it has created a new platform to share the data it has collected from 10,000 different citizens. This is known as Genome India project, which has catalogued entire gene sequences of 10,000 individuals sourcing from 83 different population groups, and it has helped India to create a baseline mapping of India's genetic diversity. Now, the government has announced the second phase of this project, which plans to sequence genomes of those with specific diseases, right? So, this is the context of our today's discussion. Now, let us very briefly understand what is a human genome. Now, human genome is basically nothing, but it is an instruction manual where we inherit from our parents, right? Now, our humans, we are made of DNA, right? So the arrangement of the nucleotide bases in our DNA is what it determines our genome sequencing. So humans, they have different sets of, essentially all of us humans have DNAs, right? But the ways in which the nucleotide bases are arranged in our DNA, it is different by different individuals, right? And these arrangement of nucleotide bases, it determines our genetic information. Now this genetic information, it can lead to differences in skin color, it leads to differences in our eye color, in our shape of our eyes, similarly our heights, the amount of hair that we have, the amount of diseases that we have or we might carry from our previous generations, like diabetes, like blood pressure, or the chances of disease like cancer happening. All of this is determined by what? It is determined by genetic information. So it is quite important for us to understand the differences in our genetic information, so that we understand whether or not we are predisposed to a particular disease, or what might be the physical characteristics of our child, right? So this is very important. Now, the genome sequencing is basically understanding or deciphering the complete sequence of genetic instructions which are categorized in our DNAs. Now, DNA is a deoxyribonucleic acid, and DNA structures like these, they have 4 different kinds of nucleotide bases, that is adenine, thymine, guanine and cytosine. Now, these 4 nucleotide bases are present in each and every DNA, but the ways in which these 4 nucleotide base pairs are arranged, it determines our genetic sequencing and our genetic information. So as to understand this pattern, the process is called as genetic sequencing. I hope I have made this clear to you. Now, each and every organism, it possesses a unique genome sequencing, which is vital for us to understand genetic information which might be coded in DNA, RNA. Similarly, viruses that are made of RNA, like COVID-19 viruses, when we undertook genome sequencing of the viruses, we were able to understand the mutations that have happened to viruses. So because of genetic sequencing only, we were able to decipher Delta variant, Beta variant, Gamma variant, Epsilon variant, other variants which were in news during COVID-19 pandemic. Similarly, viruses, they can also have such kind of a DNA or RNA sequences, right? So understanding these kind of sequencing in humans, in viruses, becomes very important for us. Now, Genome India project, it was launched by Department of Biotechnology, which functions under Ministry of Science and Technology. The intention in the first phase was to collect the 10,000 genetic samples from citizens across India, and it will help government create a database which is representative of India's diverse genetic population. Now, This initiative comprised of researchers from 20 national institutions, which was led by Center for Brain Research, which is located in Bangalore. And the data which is collected under Genome India's project, it was stored, or it is stored at Indian Biological Data Center located in Faridabad. Now, the second phase of this project, it will involve sequencing of genomes of those people who have specific diseases. Earlier were 10,000 general people representing India's population. Now, second will be the genetic sequencing of people who have specific diseases, and understanding this will help researchers compare the disease genomes with the healthy ones, so we can identify the differences between healthy genome and a disease genome, and we can understand the differences between the two. And therefore, by understanding the differences, we can understand if the person was predisposed to a certain disease, or that disease might have happened due to mutation in his or her DNA sequencing. Similarly, studying the genetic changes when someone gets different types of cancers, chronic conditions like diabetes, neurological or neurodegenerative diseases, that might also be ascertained with the genetic sequencing or genome sequencing. Now, the benefits of genome sequencing are huge. First is that it will help us understand genetic disorders. First, by understanding or genome sequencing of such a huge population, it will help us diagnose existence of such diseases. Similarly, we can understand the carriers that are responsible to understand the different kind of diseases in our genome sequencing, and also help us develop gene therapy which will help counter these kind of genetic diseases. Also, it can help companies manufacture personalized medicines which are tailored for specific treatment. It will not cater to general demand, rather it will fulfill specific demand. Similarly, it will help us predict how the drugs are responding to a particular diseases. Also, public health by epidemiology, that is conducting the genetic sequencing of large amount of population, will help us understand the existence of various variants of different diseases, and also by understanding the potency of several variants like Delta variant in COVID, which had a huge potency when it comes to leading to huge side effects of COVID pandemic. These kind of responses can be determined based on genetic sequencing. So only when we are able to identify alpha variant, delta variant, then only we were able to respond or make our policy respond to such demands. Also, in the field of agriculture and biotechnology, you understand genetic sequencing will help us make better crops, which will deal with pest resistant, which will have immune, or which will be immune to significant physiological stresses like drought conditions, etc. We can manufacture those kind of crops with the use of genetic sequencing or genome sequencing, right? Now, let's see if you are able to solve this particular practice question. If you remember, in UPSC, there was this question on applications of AI. Similarly, what might be the applications of genome sequencing? Please let me know the correct answer. Yes, Reshma, you were right. Option D is the right answer. Achal, option D, right answer, the last question. Now, answer this question. Well, development of personalized medicine, prediction of occurrences of cancer, both of them are quite simple. You understand, these are indeed the application of genetic sequencing. Now, how do we analyze migratory patterns, right? Suppose earlier a batch of people entered different lands, so you understand their genetic sequencing will be different from our people, right? Similarly, hundreds and thousands of years later, you will find two different existence of genetic sequencing that are very different from each other. So that is how you understand migratory patterns. So third is indeed correct. Now, having a full understanding of complex human behavior, these might be determined of various circumstances. These include genome sequencing, but it also includes various environmental factors, right? So you can't say that solely by understanding genome sequencing, you'll have a full understanding. By understanding genome sequencing, you'll have only a partial understanding of the human behavior, because human behavior also responds to environment and not just your genomes, right? So fourth is not the correct application. Rest three are, therefore option C is the right answer. Now I see the time is almost 5. This is the last article that we were going to take up. Now I will cover this last article in tomorrow's session. Do not worry. And I also understand today's article or today's newspaper were filled with important articles, so I was unable to take up the last left out articles from the last 2 days of last week. Now, if the time and if the news will allow me, I will take them in the subsequent days, so do not worry about any left out articles. Anyhow, I will cover it, okay? So it was very good meeting you all after 3 days. Now my health is quite good, so I will carry these sessions every day now. Please join us again tomorrow at 4 p.m. So this is all from my side. Please analyze, please do revise your important articles, and we'll see each other again. Have a very pleasant evening and a very good night.